Welcome to the EarthWorks podcast, where our team will share the jargon of carbon from many of our turf friends from the past 30 years.
Hi again, everybody. It's been a few weeks since I've been on. I'm excited to have Jeff Jensen on. He's the Southwest Field Staff Rep for the GCSAA. Called him up last week and said, "Hey, Jeff, after the water summit I attended in Northern California, I really wanted to kind of get your voice on to talk about, I guess, more the state of the union than anything, and what you're dealing with the numerous associations that you interact with on a daily and weekly basis. So thanks for joining me, and this should be a great conversation.
Well, thanks for having me, Kevin. I appreciate it. Great to be on here. Thanks for EarthWorks putting this podcast together, and look forward to our discussion here.
You bet.
Appreciate it. It's a hot topic, obviously.
I think so, and I think a lot of the country probably, it's not as in their face a subject as what you see on a daily basis in the Southwest, but I think you'll agree that it's going to be, whether it's days, weeks, or years from now. I think everybody's going to have to be a lot more up on their water rights, up on consumption and things like that, and we'll kind of get into that as we go. But I'd love to know. I know a little bit of the background and your history, but you haven't. Unlike a lot of superintendents that you work with, you haven't been brought up in the golf world or in the industry, but you kind of came to it a little bit later. Tell me about that.
Well, actually, I was brought up in the industry, but I was not on the maintenance side of the industry. I started working in 1994 when I was going to school at UNLV. I started working for American Golf.
Okay.
Actually, it was Golf Enterprises at the time, but it sold quickly to American Golf after that at the Las Vegas Golf Club. I was fortunate enough to get a job there to help through school. And one of my mentors, Jim Stanfill, who was an assistant GM there at the time, hired me. And with my school schedule, I was able to work a lot of different jobs, including maintenance, on the crew as well, some during the summer, and worked in the carts, worked in the pro shop. I did close the books and close the driving range at night at a very busy golf course in Las Vegas. And that was kind of my start in the golf business in '94. And I was going to UNLV for hotel administration. And as I started to work in the golf business a little bit more, I kind of started going through the internship process at UNLV. And I discovered that I think I was a little bit more suited to working outside a little bit more, and I enjoyed the golf end of it. And I decided to stay in the business. American Golf offered me a management position upon my graduation there. And so I stayed for, a number of years there. And then I moved on, went to work in Memphis, Tennessee for KSL Fairways.
Okay.
KSL, their Fairways at the time was a community golf division, but they had owned at that time Doral, PGA West, some other numerous resorts. So I worked for them for several years in Memphis, Tennessee, and then got an opportunity to come back to Las Vegas, where I worked for Black Mountain Golf and Country Club. And then I worked for OB Sports at the Legacy and Angel Park Golf Clubs here in Las Vegas and Henderson.
Sure. Yep.
And then in 2006, I kind of had an opportunity to go to work for a gentleman I had a relationship with who ran a public relations, marketing, and public policy firm here in Las Vegas. And I ran his company for the better part of 6 years. We just specialized in a lot of business-to-business marketing, government relations. One of our main clients was UNLV basketball, so we did a lot of marketing for the basketball program. We actually ran a governor's campaign in the state of Nevada as well. So that really provided me with a kind of a good background into some of the public policy stuff, the government relations end of it. I've been involved in marketing most of my life, I guess, so that wasn't too new there. But
Sure.
Some different clients outside of golf and kind of a different world. And then, that company was kind of in the midst of being sold, and the opening with GCSA came, and they were looking for somebody who had some golf background, but also had public policy background as well. And, I obviously knew of GCSA through my prior time in the golf business.
Yeah.
And I just applied. I didn't know anybody. Went through a very long application procedure and process there. It took about 6 months, and I just starting my 12th year now with GCSA. Wow. So it's been a really good run, and certainly enjoyed working for the organization, worked with Red Evans since he's been there. He started just before I did as the CEO, and really enjoy my time with Red and getting to work with him and our other staff there as well. And obviously the best part of the job is getting to see superintendents and work with these people on a daily basis. It's a great group of people.
Yeah, and it's amazing when you look back on the steps that you took to get to where you are and how well it set you up for that, for the position you're in now. And very similar for me. I mean, our territories cross quite a bit, and I've spent time in all of those markets as a superintendent. So it's when you have a chance to reflect and look back and see, okay, that's maybe why I did that, or so that's really cool. I knew you had done the marketing. I didn't realize how much history you had in the industry prior to that. So that's
it's about 12 years in the industry prior to that. As I said, I worked various positions, especially going through college. It was kind of in order to work with my school schedule, it was kind of all hands on board. In the summers I could work maintenance, but in the winters, when I had to go to school in the mornings, it was closing the golf shop in the afternoon or closing the driving range at night. But it gave me a good understanding of the business, and I was able to work with certainly a lot of people, and working with American Golf at the time was certainly a good experience. A lot of good people have come out of American Golf over the years, and I learned a lot from a lot of different people there. So it was definitely a good experience to start my career with them.
Yeah, that's great. So I'm not going to put you on the spot and have you list them because you'll probably forget one like I would. But so you cover which states in the Southwest?
I cover Arizona, California, Hawaii, and Nevada.
Okay.
10 GCSAA chapters in those states. So we have 7 chapters in California, San Diego, the High-Low Desert, which is the Coachella Valley, Southern California, Central California.
Oh, you're going to go for it, aren't you?
Northern California, Sierra Nevada, and then we actually have a kind of an umbrella chapter, the California GCSAA, which our 6 other chapters kind of float under there. And then, of course, we have the Hawaii GCSAA, the Cactus and Pine in Arizona, which is a statewide chapter, and then also the Southern Nevada GCSAA, which obviously encompasses most of the Las Vegas metropolitan area here.
Yeah. And it's interesting that the northern part of that state is covered by the Idaho chapter, which is people from the East Coast, I think geographically they would have a hard time envisioning that, but it's a whole lot closer to Idaho than any other civilization in Nevada, isn't it?
Yeah, correct. You get your courses in the Jackpot area, in the Elko area, who are part of the, I believe it's the Inland Empire up there. And then, even Wendover, which is on the very eastern part of our border in Nevada, actually, they basically are part of the Utah GCSA.
Correct.
So Northern Nevada is kind of its own beast up there. We have two very separate parts of the state, and not much in between them. So it's a little bit different there.
For a guy who's done that drive on 93 a few times, not much between is an understatement.
It's an understatement, yeah, correct.
Yeah, for sure. So, I guess this could end the podcast as far as broad-reaching questions. But the first thing I wrote down on my bullets was give a summary of the most pressing issues in your region, and you could either end it right now and say water, or maybe dive into some details. But obviously, your entire region is dependent upon the Colorado River Basin and what reservoirs that feeds. But what, in your opinion, in your experience, what are it's such a broad topic, but what are the most pressing issues as it relates to the golf industry right now?
Well, as it relates to the golf industry overall, obviously the Southwest, I do think water is our number one issue right now. And we'll get into that a little bit more here in the conversation. Yep. But obviously we have pressing issues along the Colorado River Basin, which not only includes my region, it also includes the upper basin states, Utah, Wyoming, Colorado, New Mexico as well. And even Mexico, the country actually, as well, as part of the Colorado River Accord there as well. So that's a huge pressing issue there. California is a little bit more different, as it does use Colorado River water in the southern part of the state, but also most of their water comes from the Sierra runoff, the snowpack up in the Sierras. So a little bit different hydraulic conditions there. But again, water is a pressing issue. But Another, big pressing issue is that golf's under a lot of pressure. It's seen specifically in California, I think more than anywhere in my region, but, we're seen as somebody who uses some large tracts of land, that some people feel, use a lot of natural resources and not enough people playing on those pieces of land.
Yeah.
So we have what I would consider maybe an open space problem. It's obviously a very liberal state, California. There's a lot of people who would like to turn our golf courses into other uses,
Right.
which they might deem more beneficial to them. Some of those could be green space uses, parks, ball fields, whatever else they may be. But they're also, affordable housing projects on golf courses is something that came up last year. There was actually a bill, AB 1910, which would have incentivized local municipalities to turn their golf courses into affordable housing sites while waiving California Environmental Quality Act and a lot of permits for builders who wanted to come in, making it easier for them to build on those facilities. And that's a big issue. And it's actually not only an issue in California. There have been several instances of this on the East Coast recently as well.
Yeah.
Again, another maybe a little bit more of a liberal enclave in the Northeast, the New Yorks, the New Hampshires, places like that. So it's not just a problem here, but that's something that's going to need to be addressed by the golf industry. Is again, I think we're kind of seen as rich, white, and elitist still.
Yeah.
Even though those of us who are close to it know that's not even close to the case. 76% of golf courses in this country are public, in one way or the other. So their daily fee are public and open to everybody to play. And a lot of our people who oppose the golf industry, they see it as a sport that is very expensive to play and is for rich people and this and that. But I'm sure, as you can say in Idaho, I can certainly say it in my region or in California or wherever. But it's basically you can go out and play your municipal golf course, go play 9 holes in the afternoon, just as cheap as you can go to a movie right now.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's not the expense that people put it out to be. There's a lot of great bargains out there, and on top of that, it's a great way to spend hours outside and get some recreation. And I know in my region there's lots of places you can walk 9 holes of golf for $13 or $14. So it's a pretty good thing there.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's an interesting conflict of ideas when the discussion is to turn these green spaces into low income housing in some regions of some areas of your region. And it doesn't, the dots don't connect for me that you'd be, fighting for green space, but then taking it away and putting housing on those properties. But yeah, it'll be interesting. I haven't heard much lately about that, but I know it's not gone away. So it'll be something that's ongoing, I'm sure.
Yeah, we did defeat the bill last year. Actually, it didn't make it through committee, and it hasn't at this point. Obviously, legislature just started, but
yeah,
right now we're not seeing it as being reintroduced. There's probably a number of factors behind that. It certainly still could be, but at this point, we were able to ward it off. We had a lot of support from golfers in the state as well as our allied industry, and it was duly noted by legislators in the state of California that golf. They were very surprised that golf was able to put up what they call a very powerful lobby against this bill. So it was interesting to kind of see what their standpoint on that was.
And since you mentioned that, I think I've got that down on my list of questions for a little bit later. But yeah, a lot of the meetings that we attend as superintendents and allied members within our part of the industry, there's a lot of preaching to the choir. But the one thing that I attended, and I know you just had one this week, the Water Summit, California Water Summit, I guess series.
Correct.
Yeah, whatever you're calling it. But I was the thing that was most impressive about the one I attended in the East Bay of Northern California is that there were several groups within the golf industry brought in, and to have them sitting down in the same room discussing the issues, such a great exchange there. And I think it's the way that we can defend the game is by bringing all these different interests within the industry together. Like you said, it's a much more powerful voice, whether it's dealing with the reuse issues or water consumption or water rights or what have you. I think that's the only way to get the ball moving forward at this point.
Yeah, I mean, the allied relationships are really important. And, not just from a golf course maintenance standpoint, it's obvious that, the PGA professionals, the club managers,
Right.
the Owners Association, these other various allied organizations, especially our state golf associations, um, in our case in California, the SCGA and the NCGA. But it's important that we work together and that they support those, water issues, pesticide issues, and other things like that. But same time, our maintenance side of the industry, the economic side of the industry needs to support their initiatives too. And those are, some focused on labor, some focused on growth of the game. They've gone through some various things that have been difficult over the years too, taxes, some other stuff on the actual business side of it. And we have to be there to support those as well. So I
Yeah.
think our industry, specifically in California, has done a really good job of working together, and we support each other, and try to raise funds when we can to help each other out. And the relationship is it's an important part moving forward. And I think I'm seeing that in all of our states where the groups are coming to be a little bit closer and working with each other.
Yeah, it seems like because there's so many pressing issues coming from every angle down there, it's a lot easier for these different factions of the game to realize they've got to work in concert with each other. I don't see that necessarily in other parts of my territory yet, but I think it's definitely an important message to get out. Is, hey guys, we got to band together. what was Ben Franklin saying? We've got to hang together, or we're going to hang separately. One of the two.
Yeah, something along those lines, and that's
Yeah.
very pretty true there. Obviously,
Yeah, for
you
sure.
don't have a seat at the table. You're probably on the menu, so that's kind of the
That's
bottom
another
line
good one.
there.
So getting back to specifically to water and water issues, um, I'd love to hear some of the positives, because I know there's some pretty proactive things going on within the industry. So give us some of the proactive stories that you've heard that have really, helped maybe solidify some of the, like you said, the seat at the table, solidify that seat at the table with other legislators or decision makers outside of the golf industry, which is such an important thing to, to get a voice in those groups, because it's so much harder. We've had Armin Sooney on here several times, and Armin's saying to me one time when he came in and consulted in Arizona is, "Hey, how often are you getting in the pro shop?" And I know I've told the story, and I said, "Boy, I don't like going up there a whole lot." He goes, "Listen, Kevin, they can't shoot you in the back if you're facing them." And I think that's a great way to look at it with respect to what we're all fighting for. If we don't get a chance to speak in front of these larger groups, it's going to be really tough to speak our piece and tell our side of the story. So what are some of the good stories? I know Rory down in Arizona, Van Pocky is through the years has done a great job with outreach and things like that, but there's lots. So tell us some of them.
Yeah, and I'll just maybe highlight a couple in each state, in the Southwest region here. But I'll start in Southern Nevada. Southern Nevada's, the superintendents here, along with Arizona, have a long-standing relationship with their water managers in the state. The Southern Nevada Water Authority here, specifically Las Vegas Valley Water District in Las Vegas here. Our superintendents worked hand in hand over the last 20 years to reduce turf grass on our golf courses, to reduce water. Over that period of 20 years, we've reduced 900 acres of turf. The equivalent of about 9 to 10 golf courses in the state of Southern Nevada here in total turf, which has saved over 2 billion gallons of water, I believe, in the state. And, just recently we went through some difficult times working with the SNWA. We are going to be experiencing some additional cutbacks starting January 1st, 2024. But I'll give a lot of credit to our golf industry here. And this isn't just golf course superintendents. It's our PGA professionals and our general managers. They've all been present at all of these meetings as groups. They come in groups with their superintendent, with their GM, and with their PGA professionals. So it's not one-sided by any means. And
Right.
We've shown up. We've worked with the SNWA. And to our golf industry's credit, we realize that this is a big problem right now. This isn't one that we can necessarily just, sometimes you do have to stand your ground and try and protect exactly what you have. But
Yeah.
we know the dire situation right now on the river. Nevada is the driest state in the union. We understand what's going on at Lake Mead as well as anybody. And we put our foot forward to do our part. And we are going to be taking some pretty serious cuts here again, starting in 24. But the SNWA has been fair in how they've done these budgeted cuts. They haven't they based them on our complete water environmental footprint, which is our acreage of our golf courses. So those who have done the work already over the past 20 years are not being punished for what they've already done.
Okay, that was going to be my question: is how can you get more blood from the stone, right?
Yeah, and exactly. And actually, the way they've done it's a complex kind of procedure, but I would just say, to put it simply, the guys who have already done the work are already meeting the mandates that are already there. They're not going to have to change the way that they're doing business. Now, some of the courses who are maybe larger acreage courses haven't taken out as much turf, haven't done as many conservation efforts. They're going to find themselves in a little bit more of a difficult situation with this, and they're going to have to do some immediate work to remedy some of these situations. But overall, over 50% of our courses already meet the mandates that were put into place in 24. They were meeting them already, which says a lot right there.
Yeah.
Again, we're about conserving water, but also when you're paying over $800 an acre foot for water here, you want to be doing everything you can to already conserve. And again, I give our superintendents, our golf professionals, GMs, and our Southern Nevada Water Authority has been so far ahead of any other water district in this part of the country as far as conservation efforts go. They supply us with a great turf rebate program, the most generous one, to my knowledge, in the country. And we have a really great relationship with them. And again, I think everybody understands the problem, but we all work together to make this work. And hopefully this is something that can maybe Mother Nature changes, of course, the way that this works over the next decade. But for right now, we're all doing our part, and we're working hand in hand with them to get it done.
Yeah, I think you talk quite a bit about acreage reduction, turf acreage reduction. So for people outside your region that are listening to this, I think it would be pretty surprising to hear what the limitations are. I know I'm more familiar with the Arizona regs, and I know when I left there, they were plodding very slowly through the third management plan, and I think now they've just ratified the fifth management plan. Correct?
Correct. They just ratified the fifth. It goes into place in 2025, but we actually just kicked into the fourth management plan this past fall. So these plans there's a time lag in between actually passing the plan and implementing it. So we're in the fourth now, but the fifth has already been passed, and there'll be some slight cutbacks in the fifth again as well in Arizona. But from a turf reduction standpoint, kind of the word of the day in the Southwest right now. That's one of the big ways to save money. To save water
and money.
Those aren't familiar with it. Obviously, you're taking out turfed acreage, replacing it with desert type landscaping, drip irrigation. In some instances, it's very vanilla. In places like Las Vegas, we don't have a lot of natural native vegetation, so it can be very kind of a lot of desert ground landscape and just some rocks, maybe some yucca trees, stuff like that in there. As you get into places like Palm Springs and even Phoenix, and you're going to see a lot more wildflowers. You're going to see a lot more desert plants, cactus, so a lot of different things there that up the price of that a little bit. But the thing is with that, you're talking about when you're taking out an acre, an acre of grass, let's just go with an acre, you can save anywhere from basically 60 to 100% of your water on that acre.
Right.
The average is probably around 80%, as opposed to having full irrigation on there. So this is a way to really, really save save water. And it's not cheap to do, though. It's it's an expensive process to take out an acre of turf, to do the landscaping, put the drip irrigation in. If you're using a landscape architect or a golf course architect, the price can it can get pretty high, and it certainly helps to have our water agencies helping fund some of these activities.
And okay, so they do provide some funding, at least, and I know that's the case in California as well, in a lot of municipalities.
Yeah. limited areas in California. There's a program through the Visit Arizona initiative in Arizona now, which helps from a state level, helps fund our those activities on golf courses. That was something
Right.
Governor Ducey used American Rescue Plans funds actually for that.
Mm.
We can get to that a little bit later, but another good relationship with the governor that provided money for the golf industry.
Right.
But the Southern Nevada Water Authority, they actually give $3 per square foot for the first 10,000 square feet, and then they give $1.50 per square foot up to a $500,000 annual maximum. So it's a pretty generous program.
Okay. And so there are, I would assume, as there are in Arizona, there's a total acreage limit of irrigated acres or turfed acres. What is that number now?
That's 90 acres plus 10 for a driving range.
Okay.
So that's applicable to California and Arizona. And excuse me, I'm sorry, not Arizona, Nevada. I'm sorry, California at this point for existing courses does not have any acreage limitations. However, we do have some chapters in our new model water efficiency landscape ordinance that would limit again to 90 acres plus 10 for an 18-hole golf course for newly built golf courses in California.
Okay.
So kind of along the same lines, others would be grandfathered in, but new golf courses being built would have a 5 acre per hole limit. So if you have 27 holes, obviously you still get the
Sure.
5 acres per hole plus 10 for your driving range.
I had heard somewhere a number of 75 acres, and I don't know if that's off in the distance or if that's one particular municipality, but that definitely gets to be pretty tight, doesn't it? You mentioned Angel Park earlier. I think that was 150 acres of grass at one point. So
Angel Park used to be a large facility, 36 holes with a big driving range, a putting course, and a par 3 course. But they've done a great job eliminating a ton of acreage out there over the last 20 years. They're a good example. But yeah, I haven't heard the 75 yet at this point of moving it down to there. But we do have numerous golf courses right now that are operating at 75 or under acres.
Sure.
Red Rock Country Club, Desert Pines, Painted Desert here in town, Rhodes Ranch. A lot of these courses are operating at under 75 acres. And even in Arizona, we're starting to see some of that too. I know Curtis Terrell up at Desert Highlands. Curtis has 64 acres of turf on, arguably one of the best golf courses in the state of Arizona. So it can be done. But it gets to be, it's a juggling game, obviously, keeping it playable for your members and for your guests.
Well, my old stomping grounds at Desert Forest had 55 acres.
So
definitely some ribbon-like fairways that'll eat your lunch if you're not careful. So the proactive approach, that's a good one. What would be the impediments to progress in this regard, as far as I guess going back to what you said, having a seat at the table, what are you seeing as an impediment that's slowing the industry down with that respect?
Well, I think a couple of impediments. It costs a lot of money to save water. Money here is a definite impediment. For the industry, if we're looking at, you're looking at a new irrigation system, putting something like that in, I mean, you're probably on the low end at $3.5 million right now.
Mm-hmm.
You can probably get up to $6 million depending on your facility. So that's a very big investment. So some of that time can be a difficult sell to your membership or to a management company or municipality, whatever the case may be. So money is an impediment there, for sure. Again, another major impediment to more water savings is the perception amongst golfers actually out there. And I find this particularly probably true in the Coachella Valley and the Palm Springs area, a little bit more than some other places. But they don't particularly like to see the brown grass out there, the dormant grass in the winters. So that's an educational process, and I think that will happen over the years in different in areas like that. It's already happened in Southern Nevada. I think maybe they're a little bit more ahead of it here. Arizona's slightly behind us, but you're starting to see in Arizona for certain. You see most of the courses now are not overseeding roughs; they overseed tees, greens, and fairways. and in Nevada, basically anymore, there's a lot of golf courses that are not overseeding whatsoever at this point, or maybe just doing greens and tees, so no fairways,
Sure.
no roughs. Just do some painting in the winter, some turf colorants, and go away with that. And I think it's being more accepted here. Those turf products, those pigments are getting a lot better. Some of these guys are pretty masters at making it look pretty darn good.
Darn
And,
right they are. Yeah.
that can be a huge savings. That can be a 30 to 40% water savings per year for a golf course if they're not overseeding. So,
Yeah.
I think that's part of the future here. But again, right now, there can be some, you're dealing with a membership or you're dealing with homeowners also on the side of the
Mm-hmm.
course. Maybe they're not even golfers. They look out and they say, well, it's hurting my home values. I don't like the turf being removed, or I don't like the golf course looking dormant in the winters. But I think if you look at the price of real estate, it doesn't reflect that.
Right.
In my areas, I'm certainly not living on a country club right now, so I can pretty much tell you that the price of housing hasn't gone down because of those. I think that's more of a perception issue than
Right.
anything. But those are a couple of the impediments. And I mean, again, this stuff is very expensive to do. It is expensive to save water, believe it or not. I mean, taking out turf is an extremely expensive proposition. When you're going through the whole aspect, it can run $3.50 to $4 a square foot to go through a turf removal project. Taking it out, putting
Sure.
it back, drip back in, natives back in, whatever you're going to do there. Architect fees, this and that, and so that's an expensive proposition as well to save the money. And again, so return on investment. I think you can make the argument, but anytime you're spending money, people look at it and
Yeah.
they question it a lot.
Well, the thing I see in that is it may be a big upfront cost, but the ROI is the repeated savings of water. And I can't tell you how many conversations I've had with golfers in the Pacific Northwest that want to go down to see some sunshine in the wintertime, and they end up in Vegas or Phoenix, and oh my gosh, it's $300 to play around a golf. And my first question is, you do realize they're paying $1 million for water every year? Oh, that would have something to do with the cost then, wouldn't it? So, on the flip side, maybe it costs you $4 or $5 a square foot to reduce the turf acres, but that's a savings every year from there on out as far as irrigation water costs, right?
Oh, absolutely correct. You're going to be saving that money every year
Yeah.
now moving forward, and under the stipulations. Obviously, now with stipulations being so severe, you're going to be able to route that water to other areas of your golf course that need it,
Yep.
Specifically. And then, like I said, the return on, I think Pasatiempo and Santa Cruz. I know you're, just a man as well up there, and you've been to that facility, top 100 golf facility in the country. They put in their own reclaimed water site
Yeah.
on facility site a few years ago, and looking at the overall cost of that, it was $10 million. Now that's a lot of money to a golf facility,
Mhm.
but again, Pasatiempo is a $400 a round golf facility. It's got members as well. It's kind of a semi-private facility, but you started to look at that, and you started to look at the cost of water. And as it's risen up, Justin will be the one that'll tell you, their actual return on investment in that has gone down to about 6 to 7 years
Yeah.
on a $10 million investment. So they're going to make up that cost, maybe let's say 7 years. And then from there, they're going to start making, huge return on investment on that infrastructure that they put into place. And that was, a very difficult project that Justin and Scott White put together there, working with, the government, a lot of government policy there that was, water crossing borders, counties, different stuff like that. But they were able to get that done. And wow, is it going to pay off for them in the future?
Yeah, and the amazing part about that story is that was largely proactive. It was voluntary that they sought that source of water out, knowing what was coming down the line, and to have that kind of foresight and that salesmanship, if you would, because like you said, that's a big nut for any golf course. I don't care how much you're getting for a round of golf. That $10 million bill is nothing to sneeze at when it's essentially something you can't see. You're going to see the results of not having it. And I think that was a great story that Justin told at the summit that I attended. That when I can't recall what year the restrictions really hit him.
Two, 2014, he
14.
had about a 50% restriction, and
Yeah.
I think you saw the photos from what
Yeah.
that looked like, and
And
I
that was
think they
prior to that infrastructure being in place, right? So they had a great case study right on the property. Here's what's going to happen if we don't have water.
absolutely, and they had actually been, I think, advanced a little bit of working on that in advance of that, but at the same time, that was kind of, I think, the selling point when it got to that aspect. When they started looking at it, that hey, we're limited to only, as you saw, they were limited to only tees and greens, um, and it does get warm in Santa Cruz in the summers, and it was not the appearance that they were hoping for, and obviously they went to work, and were able to put a deal together that is going to secure them their water future right now. So
Yeah, yeah, it's a pretty cool story, and um, I want to get Justin on again. I know he's been on once, kind of talking about the golf course, but I'd love to have him tell that story. And I still think he would say that it wasn't very easy to get that
definitely
through,
not.
but certainly, after listening to the story again, it was well worth the efforts for sure. So what this wasn't on my list, but I'm just going to throw this out. What 3, 4, 5 steps on an individual property? And I'm thinking of one in particular because I had a pretty big role in ours. But what 3 or 4 steps do you think a single facility could do if they're not in the Southwest to try to be proactive with respect to not only their water rights but consumption, uh, being aware of what's on the horizon? What kind of things would you suggest that clubs brush up on or be aware of before they have to?
Well,
Does
I
that
think
make
that's kind
sense?
of maybe a twofold question. I think one of the first things, and it's outside of the policy area, but I think it's doing the simple things. It's making sure your heads are raised. It's making sure your nozzles are operating correctly. It's getting everything you can out of your irrigation system, whether that's
Yeah,
making an upgrade. Not everybody can do a new system, obviously, but doing what you can to, doing irrigation audits, doing the small things that you can do basically in house to help save water. Are you going to save huge savings off of that? Probably not, but you can probably see if you're doing that type of stuff, if you're raising your heads, if you're doing the nozzles, you're doing that stuff, you can see a 5 to 10% water savings,
yeah,
probably from those activities. Look at some of the wetting agents you're using, the surfactants, start taking a look at that program, start testing some different ones that might work on your facility. As you're aware, Kevin, they work differently at different places.
sure. Yeah,
Again, and that's another thing that can save, another 10+% possibly, or right in that area. I don't think there's a silver bullet on that stuff, but I think it's a combination of efforts that can
absolutely.
get you some severe savings. Now, from more of a larger picture standpoint, I think some of the things to consider. Now, in our region, obviously, I think one of the big things that we're starting to really look at in my region is that we really need to start, specifically in California, we need to start really looking at moving our warm season grasses further north.
Right.
That's going to make a big difference. We're going to see probably, if you go from a cool season to a warm season grass, probably at a minimum of 25% savings for making that transition. And we are seeing more courses up to the Bay Area now starting to go to, the drop tolerant Bermuda grasses.
Yeah.
So that's a foresight type thing that I think, we really need to start looking at there. So from that standpoint, there's some of that. From a policy standpoint, the most important thing to me is that, you get your club together, whether it's a Greens Committee chairman, your superintendent, your GM, and you approach your water district. And the reason I say from an individual standpoint, and this is nationwide probably in a lot of instances, it is different in some places, but in California we have 435 water districts. So there's not a size one fits all approach to this. Everybody
Sure.
has different regulations and rules. And I assume that in a lot of parts of the country that operates like that as well. So whether it's with your local water district or it's your state water resources control board, I really recommend that you set up a meeting with them and get down to what's going on in the future in your area. show them what you're doing, have them out for a tour, show them some of the things that are going on at your golf course, show them your BMP manual if you've completed that. You know, we have every BMP manual in the state has, and not in our state, in the nation actually right now, we have 50 of those guides in place right now. Every one of them has a water BMP in there.
Yeah.
You know, show those people what we're doing, show them how we're saving water, get out in front of the problem. And I can guarantee, one thing I can guarantee you, there's a lot of people that are scared to do that, but when things come down, you're going to have that relationship already in place. And if they're knowledgeable on what you're doing, you're not going to be the one that gets targeted in this.
Yeah.
You're going to be the one that they look to. And you know, I kind of pointed out to, you know, the Southern Nevada Water Authority, the Coachella Valley Water District, which we had a water summit meeting yesterday in Palm Springs. Both of them noted that the best irrigators are golf course superintendents. So,
Sure.
you know, and that's because they've seen what we do and they work with us. And if they didn't have that knowledge, if we're not out there tooting our horn to say that, I guess to use that term, they don't know that. But, you know, we need to get out in front of it. And, you know, I think superintendents are always pretty humble guys. They don't always want to go out there and, you know, talk about how great they are and what they're doing and this and that. But at some point, we need to share those stories.
Yeah,
so I think that's really important.
I agree, and I'm glad you mentioned the BMP thing. I chaired our state committee for putting ours together, and you know, I just saw that as it goes back to what Armin Sooney told me years ago. You know, it's so much harder for an outside agency to shoot you in the back if you're facing them with that BMP document in your hand, and it's not a difficult thing to put together. And you know, would certainly encourage everybody because it's a great document to take to those meetings, and like you said, tell your story.
Yeah, absolutely.
We talked last week about this, but I was just sworn in yesterday for our 2-county soil water conservation district board, and sat next to a lady who was on the weed committee or the weed commission board for the state for a number of years, very involved, master gardener. You know, we were just talking offline about, you know, my history, and I could see right away there was a front that was put up because golf was evil, and she knew it, and I said, you know, almost every golf course I know of has a $10 or $15 or $20,000 weather station that they use to deliver water as efficiently as possible. And she looked at me, she said, I had no idea. Well, that's just one little piece of what every golf course superintendent does, you know, to manage their property. And because she asked me what my axe was to grind, and I said, well, I don't really have an axe to grind, but if there were one thing that I could leave after my 4-year term, knowing that I moved the needle, it would be something as simple as, you know, some kind of a program to help commercial entities as well as residentials put some kind of a water sensor, a rain sensor on their irrigation systems so that they aren't running in the rain. Because you don't see that happening on golf courses, but you know, there's a whole lot more acres in commercial and residential real estate that we could certainly move the needle on, I think. And you know, but that goes right back to BMPs to explain what superintendents are doing already, because they've got to present a playable condition on the golf course every single day. You know, that pressure is not only internal but external as well.
Yeah, and I mean, like what you're doing is very important too. You know, running for boards like that. We have numerous superintendents throughout the country who have run for water boards, who have run for things like you're talking about there, who serve on, you know, a county board of supervisors, you know, things like that. And again, it's representing your industry, protecting your industry as well, and it also establishes a lot of relationships. I found that you know, the working with agriculture is particularly important in the state of California, and I've established a lot of good relationships through that with their lobbyists and others in the state there. And you know, they obviously have a lot more money than we do, and we're able to dovetail a little bit off of their activities. But those relationships are extremely important to have. That, you know, when a lot of the issues are very similar, and when you're able to go to the table with agriculture as opposed to just the golf industry,
yeah.
It makes a big difference.
Yep, no doubt about it. No doubt. And it's not, they might be viewed as strange bedfellows, but we're all essentially agriculturalists at the end of the day. You know, it's different crops, and we're not as worried about yield in the positive way, but yep. It's all consumptive, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yep. Yeah. So looking forward, I'm already looking at the clock saying, man, this is flying by. Looking forward, so we talked about what you can do on your facility. Now, maybe pull back another step and look at chapters or the GCSAA as a whole. Um, uh, what do you think the best couple of pieces of advice? Because you've seen a lot of success stories where you are. What pieces of advice would you give those chapter leaders, the boards, maybe GCSAA board, as to what you've seen work really well with respect to any of these regs? But I'm trying to drill down on the water. But what things have you seen work really well that you could pass along to other regions of the country?
Well, like you talked about, one of the things we've come up with is we have a drop, seminar series that we put together. We had one in Southern California in August, one in NorCal, which you were present at in December, and we just had the Coachella Valley Water District one yesterday. And we've had approximately 200 people at each one of these, not just golf people, but water regulators. We've had media, we've had, our local water districts there, policymakers, lawmakers. So getting the word out to those folks is extremely important. It serves as both an education, internal education for golf course superintendents, but an external education for those other folks as well. So I'd highly recommend that the chapters start looking at those type of educational opportunities that not only involve their members, but involve others outside of the golf community. Start to get those other people involved. Like I said, whether they're your county supers, anybody that works in that water world is an important person to get involved. So I'd highly recommend the chapters look at doing that. The other thing I would look at is if you're not doing a lot of data collection. Arizona has done a great job. We just introduced a program where we're actually doing third-party acreage verification on all 300 golf courses in the state of Arizona. We've actually put together money so the courses themselves don't have to pay to do that. We have a third-party provider that's coming out and doing the work there. They're, getting the acreage verified. They're doing the CAD work and so forth for each course. And we're going to be able to use that information with the Arizona Department of Water Resources to make sure that our acreages are right for budgeting. There's a lot of mistakes that can go on. So, whether it's something like that, or it's just, each facility coming up with, their data on their water use, to have that in front of you is very important. Because I think Mike Huck used to say, you can't really monitor what you don't measure. So, if we're not out there, we don't have dedicated meters, landscape meters. We need to know what we're using exactly, not only where we're using it, but what we're using. And I think data collection is something that's probably underestimated by facilities and by chapters.
Totally agree.
To have that information available, it's going to be crucial come these meetings with regulators in the future that we have that stuff in front of us, that we're smart about it, and that we know what we're doing, instead of just saying, well, we think we use 450 acre feet a year, but I don't know. It's not a great answer there. And
great point, though.
Yeah,
great point. I grew grass in Idaho for 20 years, 5 of which were in an area of the state that gets less than 10 inches of precipitation a year. You might call that a desert by some definition.
Absolutely.
In 20 years, I never had the request for water consumption by any Department of Water Resources, local, state, anything. And to me, that doesn't mean I didn't keep track of everything, because my time in Arizona taught me that that's, like you said, information is power. But to me, that's a great first step. Just know what you're using, because it's no different than, I can remember back to 2008 when the economy tanked, and my ownership came to all of the department heads and the managers and said, hey, we need you to cut 10% out of your budget. I'm sure we were the only facility in the country that had that request, but what 10%? Unless you know where you're spending your money, unless you know where you're putting your water, it's really hard to say, you know what, I can make a 10% cut. It's going to go on, outside roughs or what have you. It's a great point, Jeff. I think that's super important to just know where you're at.
Yeah, and then the last point I'll make on that, I know we're running short on time here, but is try to work with your water agencies, and when you're doing the budgeting and when they're going through that process, try to use scientific based budgeting, whatever that might be in your area. In California, it's a maximum allowable water allocation, as opposed to using some type of baseline historical method. Because
Sure.
again, when you start using history, you start using baseline years. Are those wet years? Are they tend to probably want you to budget off of cut off dry years already, so you're already being hurt there. And we found that kind of that's the gold standard out in California right now, and we're able to work with that because we do have a plant factor of 1.0 out there.
Mm-hmm.
So when we get cutbacks, we're able to scientifically work off of those, like we did at our courses in LA this year, who had 35% cutbacks in June that they had to meet. Fortunately, when we did that, we went through the budgeting process. Because of data collection, we already had that. We were able to put all that stuff together for the Los Angeles Power and Water. We were able to show them, hey, we have all these numbers for all 35 courses. Here they are. Here's what we need to do. We realized we need to cut 35%. Even though that was stringent, they were allowed us to also use our mixed use on that as well. So we can continue to use the well water. We can continue to use the potable, in the mixed situations, which a lot of courses do there.
Sure.
Instead of just saying, well, it was going to be 35% off of your potable only. We were able to still continue to use different sources of water, and that was important in being able to meet those those requirements. But again, I think the data collection, the budgeting methods are very important. Again, that you use those as opposed to the historical, because the historical also punishes golf courses that have already done a great job of reducing usage, maybe reducing turf. They can't cut it. It's hard when you've already cut 25 or 30% off. How are you going to find another 35%?
Right. Exactly right. That's a really good point. So you obviously talk with a lot of your counterparts throughout the country and different field staff. Who else is dealing with? Obviously, nobody's dealing with the water issues to the level that you are and your chapters. But who else is seeing this as becoming a lot more prevalent in their day-to-day thought process?
Yeah, I think the Central chapter, or the Central Plains chapter, which would be Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, those areas, the Southeast, again, which would include Georgia, which has had a lot of water problems over the years.
But been incredibly proactive by the same token, right?
Extremely proactive. Georgia was one of the early leaders in water conservation. Everyone, I think you look at Georgia and you think, well, why would they have any water issues? It seems like a wet climate, but they often go through droughts down there that are very severe. So those areas, are that part of the country, all along the Sun Belt states. Obviously Florida does get a lot of rain, so I wouldn't maybe include them into that. But the rest of those states, the Alabamas, the Mississippi's, places like that are not only water, consumption issues, but water quality issues as well, particularly in those areas. And Florida's another water quality issue, quality over quantity there. But, they have extreme regulations in Florida for fertilizer use, because of the runoff into their waterways there. Yep. So again, we're facing water on a lot of different levels, but, those are the places that I think you're starting to see that. And, as you know, up in your area, Kevin, you're seeing it in Idaho and Montana, and Utah now is a very drought-stricken state. So, in the if you want to call it the Pacific Northwest, the mountains, they're facing a lot of these water issues as well. I mean, certainly Montana and Idaho had some very dry summers recently, so
for sure,
there as well.
Like we said earlier, it's coming to a theater near you, whether you choose to believe it or not. So, what's your crystal ball for the next 2 to 10 years in the industry? Are we going to survive this in the Southwest? And what does it look like?
I think we're going to survive it. Obviously we're going to have to make some drastic cutbacks. We're going to have to do some things to work with this. And, ultimately I hope Mother Nature changes things around and we can, continue to see the snowfall and rain that we've seen in California this winter.
Yeah.
That doesn't end the drought, but it's going to ease restrictions a lot, I believe, this summer. We see that type of snowpack coming out of there, and hopefully the same thing in Colorado, which feeds with the Colorado River. That issue is lot more different there than California. I think we're in a much more drastic situation along the Colorado River Basin. It's over allocated so badly right now that it's hard for 7 states to come together with a plan that's going to cut water use. Nobody sees eye to eye on that. And I think that's going to be a big thing coming forward. I think the federal government is probably going to become more involved in these talks. That would be my crystal ball for the next 5 to 7 years, is that they're going to become a much more major player in this along the Colorado River as opposed to the states. So I can see that moving forward there. I think one of the big challenges for the golf industry moving forward is going to be reclaimed water. We used to always count on reclaimed water. We were one of the few people that could use it. But slowly, with technology, water is becoming water. There's indirect potable reuse. We've been seeing direct potable reuse, which is taking reclaimed water, treating it at the facility, and pumping it directly back into municipal lines for drinking and bathing and everything else. That's happening in Monterey in some places, San Diego. So that limits our argument to using reclaimed water when you can use it to bathe, you can use it to drink. Toilet to tap is what it's called. Not very attractive to me, but
exactly.
Some of this may be the future in the Southwest, and that's going to make things much more difficult on golf when we're not able to rely on regular reclaimed water like we have been.
No, that's a really good point. I didn't even think about that. We've kind of been the dumping grounds in a lot of parts of the country for that product, and it's obviously a lot easier if you don't have to treat it to that level, and a lot cheaper. But
there's cost and marketing concerns on that. But again, you're seeing that in Southern Nevada right now as a prime example. They 99% of the water that wastewater here is actually it's treated. It's pumped back into Lake Mead for storage, and then it's pumped back out when it needs to be used again. So that's indirect as opposed to direct, which would be, again, pumping it directly into municipal lines, which is a much more expensive process. But we're seeing it now. So if you're seeing it now, you're going to see it in the future sometime.
Yeah. Gosh, there's so much more we could talk about. The whole issue of water storage in the state of California is so far behind the 8 ball, and boy, that's a big issue that's not going to be solved overnight. But we'll have to get to that next time, I guess.
Absolutely, I'd love to be back on.
Yeah. Okay. So my promise is always to get a lightning round in, and I had to take the questions off because I don't want you prepared for these at all. So they're easy. They're not going to paint you into a corner or anything, but it's a little more personal. So college or pro sports?
Pro sports.
Okay. What sport in particular?
I'm a Raider season ticket holder, so NFL's my thing.
Were you before they came to your backyard?
I was, yeah. My dad's been a Raider fan for since 1960, so I was raised on Raider football. So
that worked out really well with the move.
Yeah, growing up in Montana, you really didn't have a team, so you kind of choose who you want to choose. So that was my dad's team, and kind of stuck with that since I was a kid.
Okay, cool. Beer, wine, or other?
Both.
Both and other.
I probably was a beer drinker growing up. As I've gotten a little bit older and I started hanging out with more superintendents in California, a lot of wine is drinking. So I've become I enjoy my wine. I'm not a connoisseur, but I like both. So
okay, good. Any hobbies outside of golf?
I like to work out. I've spent a lot of time at the gym. That's something that I enjoy. I used to ski a lot. I've grown up skiing, so I still try to do that a few times every year. Obviously, living in the desert, not the easiest thing to do, but I make a couple trips every year to try and get out and do that. So skiing's a big part of that. And then, of course, like I said, sports are a major thing. Obviously, going to Raider football games, and I do go to the athletic games still, a lot of basketball. And stuff
well, you've got a lot of skiing in your territory, so you just time your meetings and your schedule around. I read early in the week that Mammoth mountain area is expecting up to 25 feet of snow this week.
Correct. Yeah, you got that. And you got some pretty good skiing up in the Sierras, up in the Tahoe and Truckee region up there. So there's some opportunities for sure. But those are kind of the hobbies. Yeah.
I know you play golf because we've been paired together in the past, but what's your handicap and the worst and the best part of your game?
Handicap right now is 8. One point it was down to a 1 a long time ago. But probably best part of my game is probably driving the golf ball. Decent driver of the ball, not overly long, but keep it in play. And guess probably for 50 years old, I'm not short either. So it's
Right.
and that's probably the strength. The weakness of my game is definitely chipping around the greens, pitching around the greens. Become a real weakness over the past few years. So it's one of those guys that gets pretty nervous when you get a wedge in my hand right
Yeah.
around the greens.
And yet, like most of us, you probably, if you've got 20 minutes to give on practice, you'll go to the driving range with a long stick and start banging drivers, right? It's amazing how many guys will answer that exact thing, and then how often are you just taking a couple of wedges out and chipping? Yeah, I don't like to do that.
Yeah, why would I do that?
There's no glamour in that.
I'm okay with putting, so that doesn't bother me too bad. But yeah, why would I go chip around the green or do something
Right.
like that? That would be a waste of time, and then I'll go out and play hockey with it around around a regular round of golf back and forth. So
Exactly. All right, last one, movies. Caddyshack or Tin Cup?
Caddyshack.
Okay.
But fair enough, I enjoyed Tin Cup as well. Some of my all-time favorite golf lines actually come from Tin Cup. So I enjoy both movies, and I mean, it's. I'm not going to argue anybody's point on that. So I probably do use more lines out of Tin Cup than I do out of Caddyshack, but I still think I enjoy Caddyshack more.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so Jeff, I really appreciate you coming on, and more importantly, our paths cross a lot during the course of the year, and your involvement with your respective chapters. My hat's off to you, and the fact that you've really gotten involved with some very important issues in your region, and your voice is not only greatly appreciated but very important. So I again, thanks for all your involvement. I know you'll just kind of shrug it off and say it's your job, but as an outsider looking in, I can tell you that the help you provide and the voice you're providing for our industry is really important. And like we said early, your experience up to joining the GCSAA has really led you to this, and those skills and those tools have really, I think, strengthened our position in the industry and in the community. So I appreciate all you do.
Well, thank you for having me on. Thank you for EarthWorks and yourself, support of GCSAA over the years. You've been involved with more committee service and delegates meetings, and probably as many as anybody across the country. And we appreciate your volunteer support doing that. Now we appreciate your support of our chapters, and to have somebody out there representing EarthWorks that has the experience that you do. And it's great for superintendents in my region, Dave Phipps region, and others that you're out there. And we really appreciate your guys' support and your continued participation in GCSAA as well. So
Oh, you bet.
You never get off the hook when you're on it, Kevin. That's for sure. So
No,
you'll always be there.
The 90-10 rule. I'm the 10. 90% of the work is done by 10% of the people, and it's been my pleasure through the years to serve an industry that's given me so much, and I think there's thousands of people that would echo that sentiment, that they're willing to give because it's given so much. So it's a great industry, and we're sure lucky to have you in it. So Jeff, thanks for jumping on today, and continued luck with your position and all the things that you do for us.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Great to be on.
All right. Thanks, Jeff.
Take care.